Markle is stunningly oblivious to her own hypocrisy, and that is definitely beginning to damage her in the eyes of the public and, more importantly, really, the eyes of the media. You can't avoid the stark comparison between Meghan Markle posting and exploiting her daughter on Instagram and then her complaining that children are being exploited by social media companies. The hypocrisy is just plain for anyone to see. And when it comes to her, let's say, authority on the topic, she has failed massively. There were zero crowds for this event. In fact, most people who walked by that we saw from Meghan Markle's own feed kind of sort of ignored her. And the reality is, I think that's most of the world. Most of the world does not take Meghan Markle seriously, and it's really beginning to show and damage her reputation. So guys, we are going to get into this latest debacle from Meghan Markle and how she has utterly destroyed, I think, so much of the goodwill that would have gone her way otherwise through a series of catastrophically bad decisions. But if you haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary, so please hit that subscribe button. I'd absolutely love to have you back. And today's sponsors, ladies and gentlemen, is Cozy Earth. So I have been using my Cozy Earth items now for the last couple of weeks. And between the pajamas and the bed sheets, I am absolutely loving both of them. They are incredibly comfortable, incredibly soft. They are made from a bamboo viscose, which has this sort of cooling feature. It feels a little bit cool on the skin. The sheets themselves, I feel extremely silky. And so I'm just absolutely loving and adoring it. So is Miss Pippa, because she enjoys being on the bed, not always with me, but she enjoys the fluffiness of the bed. So guys, we have been truly enjoying these sheets, and the pajamas are classy and elegant, especially if you are traveling, which hopefully I will be doing within the next couple of weeks. I will definitely be taking my Cozy Earth with me because they're classy and elegant. And if you get caught and need to jump out of bed quickly, you are perfectly presentable. And not that that happens often, but you don't want to be caught, let's say, in your ratty pajamas, do you? You want to be caught in something classy and elegant. And that's definitely what Cozy Earth offers. So if you guys want to check out all of their offerings, feel free to do so, because they are right now, guys, having a Memorial Day sale. So this Memorial Day, give yourself the kind of comfort that lives with you all day, not just the moment you get home. There are so many great products from Cozy Earth that you can find. And so head to cozyearth.com and use my code ROYAL for up to 30% off, but only for a limited time. So it starts today, this exclusive offer from May 18th through June 1st only. So don't wait. That's code ROYAL at cozyearth.com to save 30%. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here. So thank you so much, Cozy Earth, for sponsoring today's video. It so helps all that we do here on Royal News Network. But let's go ahead and get into this insane discussion. And it started off with Tom Sykes in the Daily Beast really eviscerating Meghan and her just stunning and obvious hypocrisy on this issue. We did a deep dive about her speech at the WHO conference last night, so I'll put a link up there to that. But I just want to bring it back to something just so incredibly important and essential here, which is that Meghan is really, really shedding any credibility she ever had. She is. People don't take her seriously. She is a joke. And how do we know this? No one showed up to watch that speech. That's how we know. Now, we're getting different camera angles, of course, according to Tom Sykes. Now, some people maybe like or dislike Tom Sykes. That's not really an issue. And I have no issue at all with a journalist taking some time to actually see somebody they're reporting about in person. Guys, this is why I go on trips, so I can report about people in person and see interactions in person, because the video and the pictures can only tell you so much of the story. If you are there, like if Geneva was, let's say, an easy jump for me to make. Let's say I'm traveling in Europe, and I've done this before. So when I was traveling into Europe in December of 2024, a couple stops I was going to make before I joined an RNN trip. We do have one coming up to Slovenia and Italy, so those are in the description down below if you're interested. But as I was actually arriving in, I was sitting on the plane, kid you not, and I see the notification that, oh, Denmark is going to host a state visit from the Egyptian president that week. It was starting on Thursday. I was arriving, I think, Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday because I did Dan that evening. So I arrived in London on Monday, submitted my press credentials from the airplane. I submitted them. And then when it all went through, I made a last minute purchase for a Scandinavian flight. And then I flew to Denmark to cover the state visit, of which I missed probably most of it except for the state banquet because I got in really late. It was really fast turnaround. I was going to stay actually for Catherine's Christmas Carol event, but I was like, maybe I can see a tiara and I want to see the tiara. And so I got to see a tiara. So yes, unfortunately I did miss Catherine, but Brittany got to see a tiara, the debut of the rose cut tiara in Denmark. So I was thrilled as punch about that. But going out and seeing royals in person, after that, I did the state visit between the Netherlands and Portugal. I also did something else in the UK, I want to say. Anyways, I tried to pack as much in to see in those couple of weeks and as many events as I could cover, because to me, it was very, very important that I can cover events in person and share things with you. See the royals in action, see how they interact with each other, the press, these sorts of things, because that is really so important, guys. That is an important part of journalism. And don't denounce that, because sometimes people go, oh, he's a stan, he went to see her. No, he's being a freaking journalist. That's what journalists are called to do. And yes, journalists have opinions, sometimes too much of them, but it's important that they go and they see and they report. And this is what Tom Sykes did. And he said there were he claimed 70-ish guests there. And then he claimed there was about 70-ish people milling around. And again, we saw a lot of people that were just hanging around, but left. And it was one of those things, though, where even with a couple of days' notice, now it wasn't a week's notice, but it was a couple of days' notice. You're in a big European city, Geneva. Who showed up? No one. No one showed up. There were not mobs. There were not fans. There was nobody there. And you compare that to the scenes of Catherine. And before we get into sort of Tom Sykes' evisceration, I do want to call out and thank Queen Esther on X, because she did a great job assessing what I've been talking about for a long time, which is that Harry and Meghan generate noise and it doesn't convert. They generate headlines, but people don't actually go through and buy their products. And I think she did a really good job summing that up. So she says, never mistake constant headlines for actual impact. The reception Princess Catherine received in Italy versus Meghan Markle's solo appearance in Switzerland shows the stark difference between the genuine public affection and constant media headlines. One draws crowds organically. The other generates constant coverage. Those are not the same thing. Mistaking headlines for credibility may prove to be Meghan Markle's biggest miscalculation. And again, you see the massive crowds for Catherine and no one there for Meghan, because I'm sure a big chunk of those were just journalists. Nobody else really cared. And the reason is, guys, she has no credibility, and neither does the head of the WHO as well, who seems to think that it's a good idea for him to attach himself to Meghan, despite obviously receiving an immense amount of criticism all over the world for his handling of COVID, and despite another Ebola outbreak happening in Africa, very, very serious. Oh, no, we need to promote Meghan Markle. He even gave her like a vest recently talking about how, oh, look, he's like delighted to present Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. He should capitalize the if he's going to do it correctly, with a WHO field vest as a gesture of my regard for her commitment to promoting and protecting people's health. How? This is dumb. And as the head of WHO, he should not be wasting time with her. In fact, because her credibility is so damaged, she damages his credibility, which is already in the toilet. This is done. And it shows, and I think proves, as I said, that the WHO is not a serious organization. Meghan Markle, a shallow, vain, and vapid advocate who never lives by what she preaches to others, especially in regard to social media. And this, again, reflects the truth and the reality of Meghan Markle. She can generate headlines. She can get people to chatter about her. But when an opportunity matters, When people have enough time, who are able to, again, I was able to rearrange my trip in Europe, make a last minute flight to Denmark from London just to attend a state visit. So I arrived on Monday. I think I departed late Wednesday night. It was a very, very quick turnaround. Crazy turnaround. But I was able to do it because I wanted to, and I was able to make that happen. But Meghan, despite again being in a major European city, Switzerland overall is quite expensive, so I understand why some people avoid it, but we're almost to summertime. People are starting to take their summer vacations, and yet no one showed. Why is that? I think it's because people don't see Meghan as an authority and as a person they can rely on to be a truthful narrator and a generational impact. So let's look at it. We'll start first with Tom Sykes' video because I think that's going to be the easiest. Again, he did a live action reaction. So we're going to do it for 2 minutes. So starting at 7:45.
Democrats are going to embrace Meghan. She's very useful. Like the place is kind of empty now, but there weren't a lot of people here. There were kind of probably 60 or 70 invited guests, and probably enough.
So he says there just weren't a lot of people there. There just weren't. And I don't think he's lying, and I don't think he's mistaken. The pictures that we've gotten, there were a couple where they kind of, let's say, shielded the fact that there was nobody there by certain camera angles. When Meghan was greeting, the handful of people who decided to show up. Some of them who I think were just like, what the heck is going on? I think nobody was there.
Than 50, 60 punters. So by no means was it anything comparing to the scenes that we saw in Italy for Catherine last week, where we literally saw whole town squares mobbed, people hanging out of windows, calling her name, etc., etc., etc.
So despite Meghan, again, making this appearance, she did not receive the reception Catherine, the Princess of Wales, got. And I'm sure that miffs Meghan so much. It miffs her so much that she's not taken seriously. But the thing is, like Queen Esther said, Meghan's attention, everything Meghan's received has all been inorganic. It has all been her pay to play. And when you pay to play, you shouldn't be surprised when no one ends up actually thinking you have anything worthwhile to say on the matter. I disagree with Tom in a certain sense because I don't think actually what Meghan Markle is promoting there is accurate or helpful. The greatest protection to children online is their parents, not changing social media companies, which are designed to attract adults. If it's designed to attract adults, if it's designed for adults, which I would believe overall the internet is, parents then have an obligation and a requirement to do the best they can to prevent their children or protect their children from the vortex of social media and the internet. Obviously, you can't avoid all of it, but the burden is on the parents, and Meghan Markle wants to make the burden the social media companies. Because she as a parent is failing because she's leveraging her own child on social media for clicks and money. Again, you can't make this stuff up.
So, in terms of like Meghan's popularity, let's be frank, if you were an elected politician in the conventional sense of the word.
So this is interesting how he highlights this here, that if you were a normal politician, you don't want Meghan Markle to be by your side because obviously she cannot attract the attention that you want.
You might think twice about hitching your wagon to Meghan. But I can see if you're not an elected politician, if you run a powerful, but let's face it, fairly unglamorous institution like the world.
So he's talking about the World Health Organization, and I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but also the World Health Organization, like the United States stripped all its funding from the WHO because it's a largely corrupt bureaucratic organization. Again, they should be focusing on Ebola, which is a devastating, terrible, terrible disease, which apparently is having a new outbreak with a different strain. There are a couple of strains of Ebola, and some more deadly than others. Depends on which strain of it you get, but it's a hemorrhagic fever, horribly deadly. Obviously, we had the big outbreak. What was it, back in 2014? I think it was. So that's where the WHO should be focusing. And what he's talking about a little bit here is that the WHO is trying to expand its boundaries beyond actually fighting disease. Its whole point is to fight disease. Its point is not to fight social media companies. And to be fair, Sarandos here, Tedros here, was, I'm sure, perfectly willing and wanting to use social media companies to censor information about COVID that, let's say, he and the health organization didn't particularly like or didn't particularly find helpful. A lot of people were censored online for their thoughts on COVID, many of which turned out to be correct. So again, this is kind of a match made in hell. It doesn't help him. It doesn't help her. It's a bad move on both sides.
World Health Organization, and you've got World Health Week opening tomorrow, and no one really cares about it apart from, several hundred delegates who are flying in all over the world for their chicken dinner.
Very true. No one in the world cares. And he has made it so that nobody in the world cares. And the reason is because it's not actually doing the work it's set out to do. And when you're wasting people's money, when you're wasting their time and effort and energy, guess what? People don't show up. Your funding gets cut. People don't want to fund you when you're not doing your job, which is something Meghan Markle should take to heart. She's not making as much money anymore because she's not doing her job, which is, I don't know what it is at this point, running as ever, what have you, but yeah.
I can see that it's very appealing to have Meghan show up, shake a bit of stardust and a bit of glamour and a bit of glitter over the whole thing. I can totally see that.
And they must not be able to get anybody else, which should be concerning.
The question is there going to be a place for her in these kind of, and is it a place that she wants to be?
So that's an interesting question. Does she want to be there? Should she be there? These sorts of things. And one of the big, let's say, I think problems with Meghan and her public image is that it's all PR driven and it's not organic. If you are somebody who is deeply moving and shaking on these issues, people will organically want to reach out to you to have you speak at their event. If you are not actually generally widely helpful, you have to beg and plead, because he's like, well, you're just going to drop this the second you walk away. And that's not helpful to Meghan. It's not helpful to that WHO. Like, this was just a fool's errand on everybody's side.
In these kind of massive, unelected, globalist bureaucracies, like, I don't know if it's a particularly good fit for her in the long run to be hitching her wagon too closely to the World Health Organization.
I don't think he's wrong.
Self. And then if you think about the World Health Organization, what it means for it to be hooking up with Meghan. Well, I was very struck. I mean, now, look, I am...
So, I will say, again, he's not wrong. Meghan doesn't help the WHO, and the WHO really doesn't help Meghan. Just seems to be like two desperate grifters hoping that the publicity, again, that Meghan Markle generates will help the WHO, which, again, Meghan Markle is not a serious person. So I want to share with you all Tom Sykes' blistering article before Meghan Markle arrived in Switzerland. We won't go over all of it, but I mean, the headline here is quite banal, just talking about her showing a photo of Lilibet before the social media memorial. And then he says, does she really not see the problem? And the problem is that she doesn't see the problem. Meghan Markle doesn't see the issue that everybody at this point is catching up on. And everybody seems to be able to recognize but Meghan, which is that you cannot talk about the preventable harms of children being online while also posting your children who cannot really consent, posting them online for public consumption, knowing, especially when it comes to your kids, that they're dissected and analyzed and sometimes mocked and bullied online. Meghan Markle is perpetuating the own bullying of her children online by posting them online. There's nothing in the world that says if you're a public figure, you have to post about your children. And there's nothing to say that Harry and Meghan need to have any sort of public profile at all. You can, quietly slip into the background and you'll be okay. Like, you don't need to seek this stuff out, but yet they do. So he talks about this being a serious cause, compromises, and it comprises the memorial, 50 illuminated light boxes that look like smartphones, each displaying the lock screen of a photo of a child who died after their life was destroyed by cyberbullying, sextortion, grooming, or exposure to self-harm content. Also, a lot of people said, and I need to double check it, children who were seeking drugs online, finding the drugs online, taking the drugs, and then passing away thereafter. That is a result of drug addiction, not the internet. So he says, this is heavyweight stuff, and Meghan should be laser focused on the opportunity to represent herself as a serious person. Instead, just hours before this vital event, Meghan chose to post a photograph of herself smirking as her 4-year-old daughter, Lilibet, watched her try on outfits. Yes, a woman who is about to stand alongside the world's most senior public health official and discuss the measurable, preventable harms of exposing children to social media has just exposed her own child to social media. So it was a mirror selfie. He talks about how much clothing was there. He reckons about 250,000. I think that's a bit of an overestimation. Depends on what's there. Because let's say it would take quite a while, because a blazer at most $5,000. I doubt, unless you have a lot of $10,000 there. I mean, if he's talking her overall closet, probably $250,000 at least, but in that little section, not so much. He says it is a boastful image. It is a vain image. And given what she is doing tomorrow, appearing at an event co-hosted by the WHO, an institution primarily associated with fighting disease and poverty in the developing world, it is a staggeringly tone-deaf image. He is right. Geneva is a serious city full of serious people doing serious things. And you would assume that someone like Meghan turning up to champion children's digital safety would go down well. Actually, the mood is mixed. The international aid community is under enormous pressure. Governments have been slashing their contributions as budgets are cut. Jobs are being lost. People who have dedicated their lives to humanitarian works are watching their programs be hollowed out. I don't think an image of a duchess wearing a lilac designer coat in her Montecito dressing room is going to help. No, it isn't. The hypocrisy is so matted, it's almost impossible to know where to begin. He says we'll start with Harry. On Hassan Minhaji Doesn't Know podcast in October 2025, Harry said or declared, there's no free will on social media as it stands. Yes, there is. There's a lot of free will on social media. You can decide to be off it. You can put limits on yourself. It's about self-discipline. And by extension, parents monitoring and parenting their children in regard to their online use. Really evil, wicked people at the heart of this. Want to farm our children's mindset and market it for themselves. Okay, he describes social media companies as operating in a state of lawlessness. They really don't. Now look at what his wife just did. She posted a photograph of their 4-year-old child on a platform run by Mark Zuckerberg, one of the people Harry appears to be describing as evil and wicked in order to farm attention, engagement, and commercial relevance. 150%, that is exactly what Meghan Markle was doing. You cannot avoid it. That was 1,050 gazillion trillion % of what she was doing, because we've seen somewhat that her children result in more engagement than she does. And that's things other people have pointed out as well, which is why there's sort of an anti-influencer movement, especially when it comes to influencers who love their children, or maybe even have children, for the attention it gives them on social media. Her Instagram account is public-facing. Window shop, it is the funnel that drives traffic to her lifestyle brand. As ever, he should lowercase the ever, to her Netflix content, to her podcast. At the center of that commercial operation, increasingly, is Lilibet. And Lilibet was one of the first images we were shown for As Ever. Remember Meghan Markle's landing page? Who was on it? Lily. Lily and Meghan running through a field. The argument that Meghan does not show Lilibet's face and therefore protects her privacy has become absurd. It does. Not showing a child's face does not prevent that child from becoming a social media star. If anything, It manufactures a curiosity gap, making people more interested, not less. The Waleses do the opposite. And the Wales aren't using their children in any sort of commercial sense. And I have argued for a long time that there's sort of an unspoken social contract between royals and the public, meaning that royals get immense privilege. And in exchange for that, they do have to give up a little bit of their privacy, including a little bit of the privacy of their children. But I would argue the Wales' kids are much more private than Harry and Meghan are, because the Wales' kids are not trot out for any reason other than the parents think that event is appropriate for them, that the engagement is appropriate for them. Like, they're not trot out just to go, oh, look at my kid, look at my kid. No, that's not why George, Charlotte, and Louis go out on engagements with their parents. Archie at 7 seems increasingly out of the picture. One might speculate that an older child may have begun to express reluctance about being photographed for the internet. I don't think he knows that, so I think that's more of, let's say, a tween teen concern. I think at Archie's age, I don't think he has that much leeway in terms of consent. I just don't think Meghan cares about posting about him. She has always been more interested in Lily. But Lilibet does not have that capacity as a 4-year-old. She's almost 5. She'll be 5 next month. She cannot meaningfully consent to having her image broadcast to millions of strangers. She cannot. Guys, even if I, let's say, had a child, you probably would never see that child on this channel at all, nor would I probably even share the name, to be honest. You would never hear it. Why? Because my child would not be there for public consumption. And to post about a child online, you open up, especially if you're a public figure, to people trashing your child. Even if, let's say, I had a more influencery style account that focused on my fashion and my likes and stuff like that, and I have thought about starting something like that, still debating it. If I had a family, you probably would not see them, and I would not, let's say, be posting about family events. I would not be posting about friend events. Why? Because there needs to be a separation. There really should be between what is professional, and I would see the Instagram as more professional, and what is personal and private. And I think you don't want to be that person who's constantly has their phone in their hand and their phone in the other everybody's face. Oh, do the video again, do the image again. I mean, there's a lot of talk when Ruby Franke, who was an influencer mom in Utah, who eventually was charged with child abuse and imprisoned for it, that she wasn't really involved in the accident, but I guess her family had seen an accident, and her first instinct was to grab her phone and document it and leverage her children and their trauma for clicks. And a lot of people do that. And the children can't really consent to that. And by the time they can consent, their whole lives sometimes are on the internet. You know what? When they wet the bed last, their first time a girl shaved her legs, and like maybe even first periods, first bras, these sorts of things. And boys, it's like everything, mostly for boys, it's injuries, is online for people to consume. And people love that. And there's a lot of people who genuinely feel a connection. But at the same time, you're opening yourself up so much, and your children so much, to potential harms down the line. I honestly think if Meghan Markle was going to grandstand on the lost screen memorial, it should be more about parents exploiting their children online for clicks and engagement. But of course, she can't do that because that's what she does. So it goes on to say their entire anti-social media thesis rests on the premise that children cannot make informed decisions about their digital exposure because they are being manipulated. In their case, Harry and Meghan, of course, they're talking about, this is my bit, they're talking about the social media companies. Like Meghan Markle made a bit in her speech about, well, the child clicks that consent form in that agreement. They don't really know what they're clicking about. Again, I will say, if your child is clicking that and you don't know what they're clicking, that's on the parent, that's not on the company. But if the parent is not going to do the work necessary, and Harry and Meghan seem to be lazily unengaged parents, as far as I can tell from this, then they shouldn't be surprised if something bad happens. But they are exposing their children, Harry and Meghan, to online abuse and harassment that the children cannot consent to, that they may see one day. And all Meghan has to do is stop posting about them. Don't even talk about them. Focus on your business endeavors. Don't talk about your kids, It's unnecessary. They can't consent. If they can't consent to clicking the box, they can't consent to you as a parent exploiting them either. The Law Screen Memorial's own website says it seeks to highlight measurable and preventable harms associated with online violence against children caused by unsafe emerging technologies without adequate safeguards, which again is the parent's responsibility to manage. Yes, technology moves so quickly, but it's a parent's responsibility, not a company's job, to protect their children. But Meghan exposing her own child to that technology without any adequate safeguards, the star-child parallel is opposite. We know what happens to children who are thrust into public life before they are old enough to understand what is happening to them. Andre Agassi, who's a tennis player who wrote a memoir, devoted a large part of that brilliant book to his resentment of a father who forced him into a career before he could consent. Michael Jackson, of course. Similar adults who monetize their children's youth tend to produce deeply unhappy adults. And I hate to say it, guys, but I don't think Archie and Lily are going to be well-adjusted children growing up. I just don't think so. None of this is to say Law Screen Memorials is not a worthwhile thing. It is deeply affecting display, and the family stories are devastating. But the Sussexes' relationship to this cause has become so compromised by contradiction that it actively undermines the message. It does. She actively undermines this message. But she says something that I think some of those parents really love, which is that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's a company's fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You just loved your child, and that's all you could do. Well, love requires discipline. It requires boundaries. It requires so many things. Just flat out love doesn't mean anything without action behind it. The love requires action. Sometimes that's uncomfortable. That's sometimes hard. I'm sure there are parents who, for years, experience their children begging for an iPhone. And they have to stand strong and say no. Because it's kind of like the old adage. If everybody else jumped off that bridge, would you too? And the kid goes, well, no. Well, then why am I going to acquiesce to you now? No, I'm not going to do it. And that's difficult and challenging, but it requires a parent's action, which again makes me think in this particular situation that Harry and Meghan are lazy, unengaged parents. And you can kind of see this by the fact that they travel all the time, halfway across the world for no reason, and are not at home very often. Yeah. I also know that when the Law Screen's Memorial was first unveiled in New York last year, Archwell was still a functioning foundation with employees, staff, and operational capacity. So it made sense for Meghan or Harry to champion it. Since then, the Parents Network has been transferred to Parents Together, a separate nonprofit. Archwell itself has been restructured as Archwell Philanthropies under a fiscal sponsorship model, which is corporate language for a much leaner, less ambitious operation. Staff have been cut and the infrastructure has been dismantled. Most parents agree that a sensible, intelligent conversation about how to manage children's exposure to social media is urgently needed. Quite a complicated one and nuanced. Simple prohibition, the Australian model of banning under 16, supported by Meghan and Harry, is superficially attractive but unlikely to work. Prohibition never does. It doesn't. Again, social media is for adults, not children. What is needed is nuance, pragmatism, and credibility. He likes his Oxford comma there, doesn't he? And credibility is exactly what the Sussexes lack on this subject. You can see it reflected in her small crowd size. She has no credibility, therefore, and ergo, nobody showed up. It is a missed opportunity. Harry and Meghan could have been genuinely effective advocates for children's digital safety. They had the platform. They had the personal experience of online abuse. They had the connections, but they have squandered every last drop of goodwill through precisely this kind of stunt. And he is not wrong. Any goodwill they ever have, they squander. They screw it up because they just can't see the writing on the wall, which is that if you are going to preach something, you have to live it. If you're not living it, you can't preach about it. And that's hard. It's hard. But Meghan doesn't want to do it. She desperately needs the cash. And honestly, guys, I would argue as well, I think Meghan Markle is addicted to social media. I think she loves it. I think she spends hours upon hours a day on it. And one of the things in the video yesterday I didn't mention, which I should have, is that children sometimes mimic what they see parents do. So if a parent, if they're constantly on here, even when they're with their kid, if they're constantly on here, if they put more value on this than they do interacting with their own child, you should not be surprised that your child is begging for a phone. because you have taught them and shown them that this is more valuable than they are. Yes, the subconscious, I'm not saying everybody does that because obviously you need your phone to do certain things. But if you're going to, I think, help your child, the best thing you can do as a parent is disengage yourself from the social media as much as possible. Yes, you post from time to time. Yes, you check things out, but you're not just constantly online because you have a life outside. And it's more important for you to be present with your children than it is to see the latest amount of clicks and likes on your Instagram post. And I would argue, guys, I think Meghan Markle is the opposite. I think Meghan Markle is constantly monitoring her social media. I think she is constantly evaluating and looking at clicks and likes and engagement. I think she is constantly doing that. And so she can't be surprised that her children maybe one day think a phone is more valuable to her than they are. And that social media is more valuable than they are because she won't even make the simple step of not putting them on there. And that tells you everything. It destroys any credibility Meghan has on this subject. Their genuine solemnity has been made to look performative and cynical by the commercialization, exactly what Queen Elizabeth II warned them about and exactly what they arrogantly dismissed. I've been told repeatedly by people who have worked with and around the Sussexes that Meghan is essentially impossible to advise, that she just does what she wants and everyone else has to do the cleanup. What's interesting is when Dan read this to me earlier today, it said Harry and Meghan, but this clearly just says Meghan. It said it would replace she with they or they with she, not sure. Meghan's Instagram post is Exhibit A. Anyone with the slightest knowledge of public communications could have told Meghan that posting a photo of her daughter in a closet full of designer clothes the night before a speech about online harms to children would be, at best, a distraction and at worst, a devastating own goal. And this again, ladies and gentlemen, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. And again, this reflects so many of the challenges that Harry and Meghan are having. In particular, Meghan. She wants to be seen and taken as a serious advocate, and yet she can hardly muster up a crowd of 50. Let's be generous and say 50 general spectators, most of whom looked unengaged. They were just like, okay, whatever, we'll watch. We'll see what happens, because she's a famous person. Whereas Catherine could walk into a town and attract tens of thousands of people. I just realized, guys, just realized I had unhooked my mic earlier, ergo all of this was recorded on the computer, not on my microphone, which is a little worthless and a little frustrating because the sound is not going to be great here. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, Meghan Markle screwed herself. She did. She had this moment to have this big bright spotlight, but she just can't help herself. She needed to post online. Why? Because there's no one more addicted to social media than Meghan Markle. And you can't talk about the online harms to children when you yourself, as an adult, are addicted to social media. I mean, her and Harry even complain about how addictive it is. And yet, she is there, I'm sure, endlessly doom scrolling about her latest horoscope. So guys, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall speak to you again very soon. Bye.